Linux Mint as your daily driver, beyond the honeymoon phase. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you've ever installed Linux Mint, felt that initial rush of this is so smooth and Windows-like, and wondered whether it would still feel that way 6 months later, this video is for you. Today, we're skipping the usual install in 5 minutes hype and doing a real, no-fluff stress test of Linux Mint Cinnamon as a long-term daily driver. I've been running it in a production environment for months, through heavy video rendering sessions, multi-monitor workflows, endless browser tabs, and the inevitable stream of system updates. Let's find out if it stays rock solid or starts showing cracks once the novelty wears off. The reality check. First week magic versus 6-month grind. Everyone loves Linux Mint in week 1. The installer is dead simple. The Cinnamon desktop feels instantly familiar if you're coming from Windows, and the update manager actually feels helpful instead of scary. But here's the truth most beginner tutorials skip. The real test isn't installation. It's when the OS has to disappear so you can actually get work done. After the honeymoon phase ends, you stop exploring applets and start needing the system to be invisible. No random stutters during deep focus work. No surprise reboots before a client deadline. No digging through forums at 2 a.m. because something that just worked suddenly doesn't. That's the bar we're using today. Stress testing the core, kernel stability, and heavy workloads. Let's start with the part that actually matters for professionals. Raw system reliability under pressure. Linux Mint is based on Ubuntu LTS, so it ships with a conservative, well-tested kernel. That's a feature for stability, not a bug. In my tests with 4K video timelines in apps like DaVinci Resolve via the official Linux version and Handbrake encodes, the system stayed remarkably cool and stable on modern Intel and AMD hardware. Thermals stayed in check during hour-long multi-layer exports, and I didn't see the random crashes some rolling release distros can throw at you. That said, hardware matters. On NVIDIA cards, you'll almost certainly want the proprietary drivers, easy to install through the driver manager. Some users report minor 4K playback hiccups in VLC or browsers if hardware acceleration isn't perfectly tuned, but switching kernels via the update manager usually fixes it. Older hardware? Mint shines here. Many people are still happily running it on 8 to 10-year-old machines with zero drama. The kernel doesn't chase the absolute bleeding edge, which means brand new peripherals might need a manual kernel update or a short wait for backports. But once it's running, it stays running. That's the trade-off Mint makes deliberately. Fewer surprises, slightly older packages. Living with Cinnamon. The glitches that only show up after weeks. Cinnamon is still one of the most pleasant desktop environments out there. Clean, customizable, and genuinely productive. Window snapping, workspace switching, and the panel applets just feel right for a traditional workflow. But here's the friction that surfaces after the honeymoon. Cinnamon can develop memory creep over long uptimes. After several days or a week of continuous use, some users, myself included in testing, notice Nemo getting sluggish when browsing large folders, subtle animation lag, or even the occasional micro-stutter when dragging windows. Restarting Cinnamon with Alt F2 and typing R clears it up for another few days. No reboot needed. It's not a deal-breaker for most, but it's the kind of recurring quirk that power users learn to live with. Workspace switching and applet behavior can also feel slightly less polished after heavy multitasking compared to a fresh install. These aren't showstoppers, and the Mint team is actively polishing the desktop. But they're the exact kind of long-term niggles that separate feels great from feels invisible. The update manager versus technical debt. One of Mint's biggest selling points is its update manager. It's simple, trustworthy, and shows you exactly what's changing. For the core Debian Ubuntu packages, it's excellent. Dependency hell is rare. The complications creep in with Flatpaks and PPAs. Flatpak support is built in now, which is great for newer apps, but the update process can get chatty.
You'll sometimes see multiple authentication prompts during large runtime updates, and the downloads can feel hefty if you have several Flatpaks installed. Over months, this adds a small but noticeable maintenance tax compared to a pure .deb workflow.
PPAs for third-party software work fine, but you do have to keep an eye on them during major point releases. Nothing catastrophic, but it's the kind of technical debt that appears when you've been running the same install for half a year. Mint's philosophy of stable first means you won't get the absolute newest versions of everything immediately, but that's exactly why the system doesn't break every 6 months either.
The professional verdict: workhorse or hobbyist distro? So, after months of real daily driver use, here's the honest score. Total cost of ownership is low. Troubleshooting time is minimal for 80 to 90% of users. The OS stays out of your way, updates are predictable, and the system feels fast even on mid-range or older hardware. If your workflow is office work, web development, content creation that doesn't require the absolute latest GPU features, or just reliable general computing, Linux Mint remains one of the best choices in 2026. It's not perfect for everyone. Heavy video editors or 3D artists pushing the newest hardware might eventually hit driver or performance ceilings that require more tinkering than they want. Gamers who need the latest Proton tweaks or kernel modules will probably look elsewhere. And if you hate any recurring desktop quirks, even minor ones, Cinnamon's long-term behavior might eventually annoy you.
Who thrives long-term? Professionals who value stability over novelty. Windows refugees who want something familiar but faster and more private. Anyone tired of forced updates, telemetry, and bloat. Power users who are happy with set it up once, forget about it for months. Who might struggle? Users who need bleeding-edge software or hardware support day one. Creative pros whose entire income depends on flawless 4K plus timelines and zero tolerance for any UI hiccups.
Final thoughts. Linux Mint isn't flashy. It doesn't chase trends. It doesn't try to reinvent the desktop every 6 months. And that's precisely why, for a huge number of people, it quietly becomes the best daily driver they've ever used. The honeymoon phase is real, but the marriage can be even better. Once you move past the initial excitement and accept its philosophy of stability first, Linux Mint rewards you with an OS that simply works for months at a time. No forced restarts,